Hi everyone, in this final video in the trade union series we're discussing what happens where an employer objects to a right of access being granted to a union. So this is a new right that will be brought in by the Employment Rights Act, seemingly to increase a union's visibility in the workplace by allowing them to make an application to access the workplace on one or more occasions. So we're dealing with a scenario where the employer objects to that access and what the union can do in those circumstances. Essentially, they can make an application to the Central Arbitration Committee in the same way that many union disputes are dealt with. The CAC's job is then to make inquiries, request information, and allow that to make a determination on whether to grant access or not. So once that information is gathered by the CAC, they will make a determination, and they must consider the access principles in making that decision. So these are the reasons why the legislation is coming into place. So the access principles are that the union should be able to physically enter a workplace or communicate with workers in a way that doesn't unreasonably interfere with the business, that the employer should take reasonable steps to facilitate access, that physical entry should not be refused solely on the basis that communication can't be undertaken otherwise, and it should only be refused where it's reasonable in all the circumstances to do so. So that unfortunately creates a presumption that unless there are particular circumstances which apply, the CAC is supposed to make a determination that access should be granted. It may be unreasonable where the request is onerous, for example, so whether there are multiple requests for access or to all premises where that might become burdensome. Private dwellings are excluded as well, so I'm thinking about social care, for example, where that takes place in a home setting. The regulations will not allow access agreements in those places, but it is quite likely that the CAC will look at making determinations which do grant access. What happens then if there is an enforcement issue? So what happens if there is an access agreement in place, either by consent or by determination, and the employer simply refuses to allow access? Again, a complaint can be made to the CAC on those grounds that there has been a breach or that somebody else has prevented access in accordance with that agreement. And a declaration can be made by the CAC requiring steps to be taken to allow access. What happens if there is again a failure to allow access? A subsequent complaint can be made to the CAC, and essentially a declaration can be made and a financial order can be made at that point. So an amount that has to be paid bizarrely to the CAC, not to the workers and not to the union, which the CAC considers appropriate and likely to be within prescribed amounts, so it's going to be capped. There's going to be a maximum that's going to apply in the event of a failure, and for that reason we do question whether or not the Act has got teeth, because it relies firstly on the union having resources to access the workplace, to actually make a request for access. It then relies, if there is a breach, on the union having the resources to pursue quite onerous enforcement proceedings. And even at the end of that period, if there is a financial penalty, they or their members are not going to benefit in any way, because the money has to be paid to the CAC. A couple of other limitations. We've talked about private dwellings. The access agreement can't conflict with data protection rights or require any disclosure in breach of data protection legislation. So it does remain to be seen how effective this is and whether it's potentially used more as a negotiating tool or leverage for unions to gain greater prominence in workplaces. Regulations will give more information about the arrangements for requesting access and what form that has to take. In the meantime, if you do need any further support on this or employment law generally, please do get in touch. Visit the website chadwicklawrence.co.uk or email employmenthub@chadlaw.co.uk. Thank you.